Welcome everyone to the Commercial Forum. We are so happy to have all of you join us today. It's great to see all your lovely faces on the screen, of course. We would love to have seen you in person. We have a great lineup today with an excellent topic that's timely. I'm Suzanne Brown. I'm the Director of Community and Government Affairs for the Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors. And I also happen to be the staff liaison for our commercial council group. And I also serve on the National Association of Realtors Commercial Federal Legislative and Regulatory Committee. Today we are going to start off our program. I'm going to go ahead and introduce some of our leadership team that's here on the call with us today. I know we have Lewis McCall, who is our 2021 president. Lewis, you want to do a quick shout out to the group?
I just want to say hello and thank you for having me this morning. I just wanted to sit in and learn like everyone else, and I look forward to a productive 2021. And please, I know quite a few people on the call, but if anybody does not know me, if you ever have a question or concern or just want to connect, please feel free to reach out to me. That's it, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Lewis. It's great to have you. I know we have our illustrious CEO on the call as well. She's not on video. I don't know if Rebecca, if you wanted to say a quick shout out to everyone.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted. We can hear you.
Sorry, everyone. I had a doctor's appointment this morning, so I am in my car, but I'm going to be listening, and it's a pleasure to have everyone with us this morning, and I'm looking forward to this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And also who we have in the room is we have some of our board of directors. We have Peggy Neely, we have Cindy Reddy, and I'm trying to see, I think that is it for our board of directors. Thank you, Cindy and Peggy, for joining us today as well.
Stacy Krolak, Suzanne.
Oh, and Stacy Krolak, I'm so sorry. One of our newest board of director members. Thank you, Stacy, for joining us as well. We want to give a shout out now to all of our marketing partners that we have for supporting our events. They've supported us throughout the year, and we love to turn around and get a few words from them. Martin, are you on the call today? Do you want to say a few words?
No, I don't think he made it.
Are you unmuted, Martin?
No.
I'm not hearing anything from Martin. We want to say thank you from Martin from Inspect It First Property Inspection. He does a great job. If you ever need his assistance, please reach out to him. His contact information is located on your screen. We'll move on to our next marketing partner. We want to say thank you to Helena Donahoe with American Title. Helena, I know you're on the call today. Do you want to go ahead and give a shout out to everyone?
I just wanted to say thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Oh, good. I'm in my car. So I'm with Rebecca, lots of appointments. But again, we are very pleased at American Title to be a marketing partner for the Commercial Forum and to support the Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors with education, events, and anything that we can do to help. And for those of you that we have worked with throughout the year, thank you. We truly appreciate you and your business and your support through the year. And for those of you that we have not, we welcome the opportunity to meet with you. We can schedule Zoom calls, do pretty much anything that we need to do for you. But again, we're happy to be a part of the Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors and supporting commercial real estate. So please let us know if there's anything we can help. And Patrick, thank you for doing such an amazing job throughout the year with education. And Laura and Suzanne, you guys have been amazing. So just thank you. And I hope everyone's having a safe and happy beginning to the holiday season, which is almost the end of the year.
Thank you, Elena. It's great to see you. Hope you have a great end of the year as well. Moving on in our agenda here is we're going to quickly get through some touts that we have sent in, because this is our commercial forum. This is the opportunity for some of our commercial members to showcase some of their properties that they have available. And Sabrina Walters, I believe you are up. Do you want to
Good
unmute
morning.
yourself?
Can you get that full screen on there?
Can you not see? I have
I
two
only see
slides for
3
you.
properties.
I have 2 slides for you. So if you do the first half, then we'll go to
Okay.
the next.
As you guys can see, I have a couple of leases that are available, both about 6,000 square feet. They're willing to look at all offers on it. And then I have the residential land with beautiful views on 22nd Street. Douglas, 246 acres right in downtown Douglas. Anyone you know that wants to put some money in some land and hold it for a little bit, there's a lot that's going to be going on in Douglas. And I know he's looking to sell. My biggest announcement is my listing I have at 7841 East McDowell, which has a tenant in it, is we dropped it almost 100,000. So we're at 599. And it's right across from Lowe's on McDowell, west of Hayden. A great buy. And then my last one is a piece of vacant, well, actually, I don't have the other one on here. I have a piece of vacant land with multifamily zoning at 21st Street in Washington. And lastly, I have a piece of land right across the light rail at Alma School in Maine in Mesa, commercial. So with two entries into it. So great pieces of property out there. Anyone have any interest or know of anyone, give me a call. Thanks.
Thank you, Sabrina. That was all of the submissions that I had for touts. Is anybody else on the call have any wants or needs that they want to share with anyone? I'll give you a second to unmute yourself.
Suzanne, could you ask Sabrina what the zoning is on the McDowell property? Is it C2 or with a special permit, or what it is?
Peggy, I'll get back with you on that. I just am drawing a blank. It's C, but I don't know if it's 2 or 4. Right now, the present tenant in it is a pawn shop.
I know, so it's, to me, it's going to have a intense use on it, which really gives it a high value. Yeah, let me know. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Sabrina. Anyone else? Not hearing anything. We will continue on with our program. And that brings us to our guest speaker for today. And I would like to introduce Laura Kovacs, who is our Assistant Executive Officer and Director of Education. She is also one of my, we are both staff liaisons for the Commercial Council, and she will be introducing our guest speaker today. Laura?
Thank you, Suzanne. Everybody, I just want to say hi and how wonderful it is to see you all today, especially those who we haven't seen for a while. So I want to welcome you, and I want to wish you all a very, very happy holiday season. You know, I'm going to have to leave early today because I have to teach a code of ethics class. So I won't get to stay in for the whole session and spend the morning with you guys. But I just wanted you to know that I'm glad to see you and hope you're all healthy, happy, and stay safe during the holiday season. And Shruti, how grateful we are to have you. And thank you, Pat, for all your help. Shruti Gurandanti focuses her practice on corporate and transactional law, including mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, private equity, and venture capital. Most recently, Shruti worked as a member of the Global Hotels and Leisure Practice Group in the Phoenix, Arizona office of an international law firm, where she focused on representing local hotel owners, investors, and developers in all types of hospitality and leisure transactions throughout North America, Mexico, the Caribbean, Europe, and Asia, and particularly in the luxury and upscale segments. She sounds like somebody we need to get back in touch with regarding our global group as well as our commercial group. Originally from India, Shruti holds a BA LLB honorable from the National Law Institute University, India, and is a Juris Doctor from the University of Arizona, James E. Rogers College of Law. Shruti is licensed to practice in India as well as in Arizona. Prior to working as an attorney in the United States, Shruti worked as an attorney in India, where she represented clients in domestic and cross-border mergers and acquisitions, strategic and private equity investments, inbound and outbound foreign investment laws, and general corporate law advisory. One of the things that truly impressed me about Shruti was that in 2018, recognizing the serious threat that isolation and loneliness poses to the health of our growing senior population, Shruti launched Telavita, a health tech company that delivers content specifically designed for seniors to keep their body and mind active anytime, anywhere. Since its launch, Telavita has been invited to participate in Seed Spot's Impact Accelerator and Y Combinator Startup School. Shruti has also previously served on the board for UMOM New Day Centers, the largest shelter for homeless families in Arizona. So please help me welcome Shruti as our speaker today. I was going to say to the podium, but we don't have a podium.
We're all using Zoom until, but thank you so much, Laura. I appreciate the welcome. Thank you, Suzanne, Patrick. I am very honored to be here, and I'm excited to actually learn about each one of you. Hopefully, well, I am sure everybody is kind of tired of these Zoom meetings and are tired of just watching someone, one way present. My hope is that this is going to be a dialogue and not a one-way death by PPT. So please stop me at any point in time if you have any questions or if you want to just chat about something here. My goal today is to just give an introduction and summary of what really happened with Prop 207, what exactly is legalization of marijuana in Arizona, and how does that impact us? Really, I do have to give this disclaimer that none of this, please do not take this as legal advice. It is just a brief overview, and if you have any specific legal questions, of course, I'm more than willing to answer offline and help you get to where you want to be. So with that, Suzanne, can I share my screen?
You should be able to share your screen right now.
Okay, perfect. There's the deadpan silence, which is awkward, but give me 1 second. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Suzanne, can you see that?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. So like I said, again, please feel free to stop, ask questions in the chat, or just stop me and interrupt me at any point in time. So what exactly is Prop 207? What exactly happened? I think when Prop 207 was approved, one of the things that everyone was most excited about is, oh my gosh, yes, now we can start smoking pot on the streets. But that is really not how it works. Yes, marijuana is now recreationally allowed, but I think what really is more important is the bigger business issue and how now more sophisticated businesses can come in and really capitalize on this industry. So what really does that mean from a business perspective? If you think about cannabis before, it was, really that baggy t-shirt, baggy pants, someone selling something on the street corner. Now you have sophisticated players coming in with boatloads of money and figuring out how to really monetize this. So in 2018, cannabis revenue was actually up to $10 billion. So we're talking about big money here. It's more than e-cigarettes, Fortnite, and Goldfish crackers combined the amount of money that they made. In 2020, we're looking at a $15 billion market for cannabis. And this is not including all of the recreational that will start getting allowed in multiple states. Now, we're estimating that in the black market, this is a $60 billion market. So if we were to legalize that across the country, not just in Arizona, if we were to legalize that across the country and tax it like we are right now in Arizona at 16%, we're talking about a lot of revenue that can be generated by states. So really what the opportunity with legalization of cannabis is, yes, of course, those of us who are thinking that, you know, we can now go into the shop and buy whatever we want. Yes, that's good. But from a business perspective, this is a whole new industry that we're opening up. It's everything from manufacturing to retail to advertising to really figuring out intellectual property that can be developed for processing these products. It's so much that can be developed and so much of market opportunity in this new industry that's coming up. So think about it from a revenue generating perspective. The market that can be created just in Arizona is, we're talking about several millions of dollars. So what exactly was 207 and what exactly did we allow? So it essentially says that people over the age of 21 are able to possess and they're able to consume 1 ounce or less of marijuana and in a private setting. Nowhere does it allow us to stand in the middle of the street and smoke a joint. That's not what's allowed. It is something that you have to do in a private setting. You cannot have it in bars, restaurants, just like how cigarette smoking is restricted. It is very different and apart from the Medical Marijuana Act, so don't confuse it with that. Medical marijuana is being administered, again, by the ADHS, so the Department of Health Services, but in a separate fashion than how recreation is going to be. Ultimately, they might just have the same ways and the same rules that they come up with, but it is sort of different. There is a 16% excise tax that has been approved on the sale of recreational marijuana. It is similar to cigarettes and alcohol. And what's really crucial and what I really liked about Prop 207 is that the revenue generated has been focused in certain areas and how they're going to fund community colleges, highways, police, so fire department, and more of the public safety areas. So I think compared to the previous proposition that we had back in 2016, Prop 207 has gone a little further ahead and really created more rules and regulations in the way in which the money is going to get deployed. So licensing, what exactly is required for a dispensary to get licensed? So essentially, the ADHS or the Arizona Department of Health Services is going to be accepting applications between January 19th and March 9th, 2021. What's really interesting is that they have up to 150 licenses that they're going to issue out. And 26 of those have been set aside for a social equity program. And I'll talk about the social equity program because that's where most of the conversation is right now. But the licensing, the way they're going to be issuing these out are, they are giving a preference to folks who already have a medical marijuana license. So anyone who has the medical marijuana license at the time when Prop 207 got approved, they hit a jackpot because they immediately now are in that front of line situation where they can get the recreational license as well. And so that's, no matter where you stand on yes or no of the yes, we should approve or no, we shouldn't approve. This is my 2 cents that I do think that it gives an unfair advantage to the folks who actually won the lottery the first round. But it is what it is, and they're trying to make their life easy. So it's the folks. I remember before 207 passed, we were working at Rose Law Group. We were doing so many transactions where people were trying to buy these licenses, and the prices for these licenses were artificially in a way inflated because everyone was trying to get a hold of these so that when Prop 207 passes, they can instantly get the ability to file and get recreational licenses as well. So anyone who was able to get their hand on a license before is really in a good spot. What is interesting in 207 and what I really like is the way they have tried to create a balance in competition. So licenses are going to be issued based on the number of existing dispensaries in a location. So if you have an existing medical marijuana dispensary, then you can only have one recreational dispensary. If you have two, so there are certain rules like that, which I don't want to go into the weeds, but before you think about applying for a recreational marijuana license, or before you think about going into business with maybe a cultivator or what that might look like, be thinking about the geography of where you want to be. Think about the zoning restrictions in that place, and also be mindful that in your license application, if you don't have the real estate already locked down, if you don't have a lease or a purchase property, you won't be able to apply for a license. So that's sort of dead end. So make sure that you're figuring out your zoning and where you want to be firsthand. So here's what's interesting again. So they're going to issue 26 licenses, like I said, based on the social equity program, but the remaining whatever is left in that 120 licenses, they're going to be given out based on randomized selection. So here's where I think as a firm, as Rose Law Group, we are also a lobbying firm. So we work, where required with our clients to figure out what is it that we can do to help them. And when it comes to the social equity program, I think the firm is really on the forefront in trying to figure out what exactly does this mean? Because here's what really, really is interesting. All that the social equity program says is there are 26 licenses to be issued. And those licenses are going to be issued to promote the ownership and operation of marijuana establishments and testing facilities by individuals from communities disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of previous marijuana or cannabis laws. That is it. There's no more further definition. There's no understanding of what communities mean. There's no understanding of, is it, based on geography? Are we looking at nonprofits? Nothing to that effect. So the ADHS has been tasked with essentially coming up with the rules and regulations that need to be enforced in order to bring about the social equity program. So right now there's this big rush on trying to figure out who exactly would qualify for these 26 licenses and how do we get there. So I'll give a few examples. And again, feel free to stop me at any point in time to ask any questions, because I think this is really interesting, and there's a lot of scope here to form good partnerships and to form really profitable ventures. So there is a lot of talk about, can we have a partnership with a nonprofit, a 501c3, so that the 501c3 can then be the owner of a dispensary license? And it's a great question to think about, because if there are 26 licenses that are separately associated for organizations that work with populations that were disproportionately impacted, can I go out to one of these folks and say, hey, let's partner up, and any monies that we make are going to be donated to you, and that way you get, you have your donation-based revenue that's being generated, and it's a win-win situation for both. What's really interesting is that, remember, cannabis is still federally illegal. It's still a Schedule 1. It's still a Schedule 1 drug, and 501c3 tax exemptions are federally regulated by the IRS. So there comes the question of, okay, well, the state wants us to really partner with a community-based organization, but the IRS is threatening to take away the 501c3 tax exemption if we partner with them. So how do we reconcile this difference, and how do we really, make sure that we are complying, or, we're adhering to the intent of the state law, but not running afoul of the 501c3 tax exemption requirements? So again, I would love to chat with you if you have questions about this, because you can really come up with some very clever ways of reconciling the two and forming very good profitable partnerships in this industry. Any questions on the social equity program? I usually would love to stop and answer any if you have some at this point, because this is a really interesting area and there's a lot of talk about how do we define communities? Are we talking about geographical areas within the Phoenix metropolitan area? Are we talking about race? Is it that if we partner with a Hispanic person, or if we partner with someone from India, does that make it we're disproportionately impacted? We don't know. So if you have any thoughts on that, would love to talk about it now.
There's a couple questions in the chat.
Oh, great. Okay. Let me see if I can pull that up. I'm sorry, I'm having a Zoom. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Mesa and Scottsdale are not allowing recreational use dispensary. Is that correct? Yes. So I will touch upon that subject. That is partially correct. What they're saying is, well, they're effectively banning recreational licenses to be obtained by new players. If you are a medical marijuana licensed dispensary, then you can get the recreational license as well in order to sell. So that's interesting what they've done. Now, the next question is that legal? The answer to that is that Prop 207, or the act, allows local governments, and I was actually going to that. Okay, so it allows local cities to have their own zoning regulations, the number of establishments that they want to have, and also regulate the time of establishment. Basically, they can have their own rules on how they want to regulate these licenses and how they want to regulate the operations of these dispensaries. So they're allowed to do that, which is to create rules around it. What they're not allowed to do is be in contradiction to the act itself. There is chat about how the Scottsdale city ordinance is actually completely in contradiction to the act, because the act says that you are supposed to promote the ability to have recreational licenses and reconcile medical licenses as well as recreational licenses. So there is chat that the impact of the Scottsdale city ordinance is contradictory to the act itself and should be struck down. Has a case been filed? Not that I'm aware of, but I would imagine that there is potential for someone to say that we need to challenge this. And again, it creates that monopoly, right? Like in Scottsdale now, if anyone has a medical marijuana license, they're the boss. They're going to not have as much competition as you would want, perhaps, in this area. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay.
I have one question I have about the difference between the medical and the recreational. Is there a difference in the product itself?
So that is a good question. I do not believe from a potency perspective there is a difference, but there's definitely from an advertising perspective a difference in how it is advertised. So the product for a medical marijuana product would likely have to say that, this is doing X, Y, and Z, or it has the potential of quote unquote helping with or curing X, Y, and Z. Whereas recreational, of course, you cannot make those claims unless you have some proof for it. So, but what's also interesting is that the whole concept of marijuana testing facilities, basically the facilities that test the potency of these products, there's a whole separate way in which they operate and how those are supposed to be taxed and those are supposed to be licensed and all of that fun stuff. And again, Scottsdale has disallowed and prohibited any medical marijuana testing facilities based on their ordinance. So again, it's an interesting way in which cities are trying to regulate this. I don't know, again, where you stand on the spectrum and if this is blasphemous for me to say based on politics, but I do think that Scottsdale should allow recreational licenses to be issued and not just prohibited in the way that they have. I think from a business perspective, you can see a lot more economic activity if you do. If you have noticed, or I mean, I'm sure you all have, you're all realtors here, but there's been a significant influx in the number of people moving from different states. Now, there are various reasons why that's happening, but prices are going up for real property. There is a lot of speculation that that is because of legalization of recreational marijuana in Arizona. And that's why people are, and the weather's of course great. So something to think about, that if we can get these bigger players, bigger businesses, they employ a lot of people. If you have a growing facility here, you can employ a lot of people. So I'm more of, I think we should let it happen.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about the medical marijuana and the recreational? In other states, basically, we have seen the medical marijuana go away once the law becomes recreational. I see what they're doing here is they're giving the people with medical marijuana the ability to be first in line, because aren't they envisioning, and maybe I'm wrong, but envisioning that the medical portion will go away?
Potentially, that is a possibility. I think from a practical perspective, they've allowed that, Peggy, because they've already done their diligence on these folks. They know who the players are, they know who the owners are, they, you know, they've been able to cross-check them, make sure that they're not, you know, drug users or felons or whatever that might look like. And so from a practical perspective, I think they knew that these guys are already vetted, and that's why they started with that. It's my speculation, but I think that's what it was. But you are right in thinking that there is likely going to be a convergence of both at one point in time, because you want to have the same regulations and you want to have the way in which everything is what's the word for it? The oversight for both should essentially have an amalgamation of rules so that there isn't a confusion on, well, is it this or is it that, and why is there a difference, you know?
And
Rudy,
go ahead.
Can I ask how, when you talk about you can't smoke on the streets and things like that in public, is that the police enforcement? Because in California, it's pretty well known that just walk down the street a block away from the dispensary and everyone's smoking. So how does that enforcement happen?
Good question. It is not allowed in Arizona to be smoking pot openly on the street. You're not allowed to do that in a restaurant, in a bar, and none of the public areas you're allowed to do that. Just like cigarette smoking, it's not allowed. Is it going to be enforced by law enforcement? Yes. What is interesting is that no longer is, if a cop were to smell burnt marijuana smell, it has a distinct odor. If they were to smell that, that doesn't in and of itself give reasonable suspicion to be stopped, or for a cop or a police officer to stop you or do anything. So that's the change, because again, the reason for bringing about Prop 207 was that so many people are being incarcerated and stopped for possessing small amounts of marijuana. And that is draining, you know, causing a lot of cost for the system. So I think from a law enforcement perspective, it makes it easier for again, people to have smaller quantities, but it is important to keep in mind that you cannot be smoking at your office place. Your office place can definitely have restrictions. You cannot be smoking openly. So that brings me back to Scottsdale Ordinance. Scottsdale Ordinance says that you are not allowed to smoke, again, openly in public, but that was already the case in 207. That was already prohibited. So I'm not sure what they were trying to do with that, but it seems to me that the intent there was just to show that they're very strict about marijuana and the dispensary operations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
There's a couple more questions in the chat if you want to get back to them. I think where we left off is we have a question from Rebecca about the 501c3s. Is how likely is it that a 501c3 that partners, would they risk their status? What is?
Good question. And I would love to chat Rebecca after as well, because I don't think I'll be able to get through all of the legalities here. But the short answer is it depends. And I know you hate it because as an attorney, I say that a lot, that it depends, but that is the case. 501c3s, do they run the risk of losing their tax exemption status if they take monies from cannabis businesses? The answer from a conservative perspective is yes, because the IRS is the one that grants you the tax exemption status. And under federal law, it is still illegal to be taking money from an organization that's not operating for legal purposes. So you run the risk. But here's what's interesting. The IRS hasn't been very consistent in the way that they have implemented this requirement. So if you are, and here's probably a better way to explain this by way of an example. If I am an advocacy group in Arizona, I want to start a 501c3 that talks about educating people about the ill effects and the positive effects of marijuana, and I apply to the IRS for a 501c3 status. The IRS has historically been apprehensive of granting the 501c3 status because you are now, again, getting into that gray area. If I were to go a step further and say, I want to create a 501c3 that actually donates money to folks who have, issues because they belong to a family where someone was incarcerated because of marijuana, then the IRS has absolutely rejected their petition for a 501c3 status, saying that now you're paying money in this area. But the IRS on the flip side has actually allowed for a church in Indiana to get a 501c3 status. And the church is called the First Church of Marijuana or First Church of Cannabis or something like that. And the IRS allowed it, saying that, well, it's overlapping with a religious reason. And so it's okay. And they allowed the 501c3 status. So it's really interesting and curious to see how the IRS has flip-flopped on this issue. But I think the risk is really on, so say, for example, let's talk about an existing 501c3, right? Say you, Mom, I'm just going to pick on them for now. They're not doing this. I'm not suggesting that they are, but just to pick as an example, that if you, Mom, were to take donation from, a dispensary, they're the ones who run the risk that if they get audited, or if the IRS chooses to audit them, they can say that, well, you've been accepting donations and, you have commingling of funds. And so you run the risk of losing your 501c3 status. But there are also many, 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 many cases where the IRS has completely turned a blind eye on it because so many more states have allowed for it to happen. I think one way in which you can get around it is to donate in kind. So you can provide employees, you can provide stationary equipment, just convert the money into something in kind and give it and donate it. And I think that would still satisfy, I would argue that it still satisfies the social equity norms. But that's my 2 cents. Hopefully that answers, Rebecca.
I think it does answer a question, but I think it also leads into a follow-up question that we have from Taylor is, we've talked about how it's not allowed federally right now, but as of last week, the House just voted on and passed a legalization on the federal level. What type of change would we see, and what are the odds that this would probably get passed through on the federal level?
Oh boy, that is a very tough question. I mean, my speculation is that, or actually, you know what? I would want for it to go through and I would want for it to get approved because way too many people have been incarcerated because of possessing very small quantities of marijuana. That's my opinion. And I'm not saying that the Rose Law Group is of the same opinion. But I do think that, and I would hope that it passes because tax it tax it, regulate the way it's produced, and regulate the way people are actually consuming this product. $60 billion in the black market for marijuana. That is insane. That's crazy. If we were to just tax 16% excise tax on it, if we were to use that money in the way that Prop 207 is talking about deploying those funds, I think we can really make use of that, of those new revenue sources. But more importantly, we'll be able to really track the way in which the product is being produced. Right now, we have no level or no understanding of where is this produced, who's growing it, what pesticides or whatever is being done, how is this even getting to us? So I think regulating is a very good way of making sure at least that, look, people are going to consume it no matter what. So at least making sure that it's done appropriately is a good way. And I think the politics behind marijuana goes all the way back. And I think someone was talking about this when I just joined the meeting, but it goes all the way back to Nixon and Reagan. And it's just, a different way in which they were trying to marginalize communities and racial minorities. So
well, yeah, but there's no good intention. The road to the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It was a good thought 40 or 50 years ago. Then it was abused by the system, and it was used against the people who were least likely to be able to defend themselves. And you're absolutely right. Yes, thank you for speaking up to that. Thank you.
Right. So getting back again, leaving the politics aside and getting back to what will happen if it's allowed on a federal level, I think it will really help streamline the process. So banking, a lot of banks don't accept medical marijuana or recreational marijuana businesses, creating a lot of problem for these businesses. Taxes. There's a lot of operational tax deductions that these businesses don't get, so they end up getting taxed a lot more. We can help, once it's federally allowed, it'll help streamline that. And then I think from an employee perspective, so there are so many workers who are being employed in this industry. I think you can get a lot more unionization. You can get a lot more, and again, you can be on the fence here and there for it, but I think you can really regulate the way in which this industry operates if it is federally allowed. Also, a lot of money is going to flow into this industry once it is federally allowed. I think a lot of big banks are waiting on the sidelines to see what is going to happen on the federal level before they put in their money into this industry. So I have worked with a lot of folks who are trying to get into this space. There is a lot of sophisticated / unsophisticated money being invested into this sector right now. Once it is federally allowed, the banks are allowed to actually, store money, have transactions that can be actually reflected on the books. You are going to see, your JP Morgan Chase, you're going to see, your big tobacco companies, you're going to see alcohol companies really get into it. And now you're talking about publicly listed companies being able to trade in the market openly for it. So I really hope that federally they allow it so that you're able to see a lot more economic development. And again, I think when there's more money, there's more innovation in this space as well. So that's my 2 cents on it. I hope it gets passed, but these days it's seemingly impossible to get anything done politically, I think. Well, that was a good question. Were there any else, Suzanne, or I could just
There's a couple other questions, but I think you're going to get to them because I know when you're getting to the Scottsdale Ordinance and how that applies with everything. So let's get you back to your presentation and we'll get those questions answered.
Perfect. Great questions, everybody. I love it. Please keep them coming. Employers and businesses. So I think I touched upon this, but businesses may absolutely prohibit the use and possession of marijuana on property. You can also have a no drug policy. So just like you have existing right now, no smoking, and whatever drug policy you have right now, you can continue to have that. You are not, just because it's recreationally allowed, doesn't mandate you to allow it in the workplace as well. Local regulations, like I said, the Prop 207 does allow cities to create their rules and regulations around how to create the ecosystem. The restriction that they've applied is that these rules cannot be unduly burdensome and cannot conflict with the act. And so that's where my argument for the Scottsdale City Ordinance comes up, that when they say, and actually maybe let me talk about what the ordinance says. It says, no transportation or sale of recreational marijuana is allowed unless it is by a medical dispensary, which effectively is in contradiction to the act, because the act says that you are supposed to provide rec only and medical marijuana licenses together. So transportation, that is an interesting one. That essentially just means delivery services. So if your Amazon package is coming with a bag of weed in it, that's not going to happen in Scottsdale. But in any case, that's wasn't going to happen until 2023 under Prop 207. The ordinance also prohibits, like I said, public use, which was already prohibited under 207. And I think lastly was no medical marijuana facilities are allowed in Scottsdale, which is that you cannot have a facility that tests potency for marijuana in Arizona. So that's in a nutshell of what the ordinance is. So legal considerations, or what exactly from a consumer perspective should you be considering, and what should you think about? The smell of marijuana, like I said, it's no longer something that constitutes suspicion, and you cannot be stopped for just the smell unless you are driving when you're intoxicated and someone stops you for a DUI. That's okay. The possession of more than 1 ounce but less than 2.5 ounces is now a petty offense if it's a first offense. And then there are scales, like if it's a second offense, I believe it's a fine of $100, and then I believe a third offense is a misdemeanor. And just for context, if you're wondering what 1 ounce looks like, that's basically it. And there are some people who are spending years and years in prison for personal consumption. All right, underage possession. Okay, so again, there's a lot of fear about, and I hear this quite often, that kids in schools are going to start using this. And please be fully aware that if you are 21 and younger, you are not allowed to buy recreational marijuana at a dispensary. You have to be 21 and above. And it's any problem that we're facing right now with vaping or cigarettes are far worse, or alcohol consumption by minors, it's far worse than what we're seeing with marijuana. So, and another interesting fact, or a fun fact, is that by allowing marijuana or removing cannabis from Schedule 1 federally will allow a lot of research money to be invested into marijuana and cannabis. And I think that's really going to help us understand the long-term effects and what are the side effects, if any, of this drug. So far, it has been shown that there have been almost, I want to say no deaths, and I don't quote me on this, but I believe that's the statistic. There have been no deaths based on marijuana consumption, and it's far, far, far less, it has far less negative effects on your body compared to alcohol, or actually to flip that, alcohol and cigarette smoking is way more dangerous to your health than marijuana. There have been no clinical studies that show marijuana to have these impacts or effects. So just some fun facts out there, but I do completely understand that not enough money has been invested to study at a Harvard or Stanford scale to understand. What really actually drove home to me was there are a lot of older adults, a lot of seniors who suffer from Alzheimer's, chronic pain. 88% of people who have medical marijuana licenses are people with chronic pain. And Alzheimer's is also an increasing number of people who are subscribing to this. And the it's so interesting to hear their perspective that they were not able to find, anything for their chronic pain until they were able to try medical marijuana, and that's really helped them. So think about, I know it sounds kind of funny that 80-year-olds are smoking pot, but don't think about it like that. It is something which is helping them, really deal with their chronic pain, I think. So there are a lot of good that's coming off of it as well. So from a real estate perspective, those of us who have, I'm a homeowner, of course, and then I also have rental properties. When this came out, I was wondering, okay, now how does this impact me? Can my tenant just randomly decide to start growing, because you are allowed to grow up to 6 plants? The answer is, just like you can have a no tobacco policy, don't smoke in my house, you can have a similar no marijuana, no growing, no policy. Please add it in your lease. Don't think and assume that they understand it. It has to be in your lease, and it has to be clearly implied, and it has to be clearly and expressly told to them. But the flip side, or the business side to that, is if you have someone who has a medical problem, or are you reducing the number of tenants that you have access to, and all of that fun stuff. So closing thoughts, and again, please leave me some questions if you do have anything. What is my role as an attorney in this space? So I, like Laura, when she started, thank you again, Laura, for that introduction. I essentially, in a nutshell, help entrepreneurs start, grow, scale, and ultimately sell their business, and in the process also help them buy businesses if they want to. So really help them from start to finish, soup to nuts. And so my job essentially is in this space is, again, to help everything from what is the structure that you want to have, what is the entity that you want to use, what are really the regulatory compliances that you need to comply with in order to be successful in this business. Help you understand those nuances and help you structure that in the most effective and economic way for you. A lot of land use and zoning regulations are involved in this, depending on where your dispensary is located, what you can and cannot do, how far away from the school does it have to be, and all of that fun stuff. And of course, you can make mistakes, but with an attorney, it's less likely that you will. And if there is a mistake as well, you're able to really make sure that it's not as catastrophic as it could be. So my job is essentially just to help navigate people through that. So that's me, and that was my big spiel about Prop 207. Hopefully that was helpful, and if you need to reach me about anything, please feel free to drop me an email, and I will be more than happy to respond.
Thank you, Shruti. We do have a couple more questions that have popped up in the chat. One of the questions was, when does this go into effect? So maybe you can answer that for both Prop 207 as well as the Scottsdale Ordinance.
Yeah, so once it was approved, I think it was November 30th that it actually got approved. So today you can go into a dispensary that has been recreationally licensed and buy recreational marijuana, but it's my understanding that they haven't started issuing the licenses yet. That's going to happen. They're going to start accepting licenses anywhere between January 19th to March 9th, and then it'll take a little bit of time. So is it in effect? Yes, but by the time it rolls out with all of the rules and regulations, think about July 2021.
Thank you. What about the Scottsdale Ordinance?
So the Scottsdale Ordinance, again, depending on when the licenses start getting issued for the medical marijuana ones as well, that's when practically it's going to be implemented, because right now I don't believe anyone has a recreational license already to go out and really start thinking about the ordinance right now. But if you are looking to start by figuring out where you want this dispensary to be placed. Look for places that don't have very many dispensaries already, so that it increases the chances of you getting the license. How about eatables? Any regulations on? Thank you, Peggy, for that question. That is a very good question, and it has a lot of details about eatables and regulations on it. Again, from a potency of what to display, how do you advertise, and all of that. We can chat offline about it if you have any specific question.
We have another question about social equity applications. Is a charge or conviction required?
Oh, so do you mean that the applicant has to have a prior conviction? Okay. I don't believe that is the case. So they're not trying to say that you need to be a convict in order to apply. They're trying to say, think of it more as, do you belong to a community where people have been disproportionately impacted by prior cannabis laws? So you don't have to be a felon in order to apply for it. And I do believe that they take it very seriously about what your prior history is before giving you a license. Okay, lots of questions coming in, huh?
Yes, I think one of the other ones is in regards to the municipalities and their ordinances. Take Scottsdale's for instance. Do you foresee these being challenged in the civil courts?
Potentially, yes. Potentially. I think the cannabis industry in general is pretty litigious. And they will fight it if and when the need arises.
I think one of the other questions, I know it's not in the chat, but it's one that I've had some of our members bring up, is in regards to what about people with who are sensitive to, say, cigarette smoke, or in particular marijuana, they're allergic to it. What are some of the items, that disclosures or things that our agents should be aware of and might need to include in, say, their lease agreements, or if they're trying to buy or sell property, if there was marijuana in the facility, especially if there's, say, a shared ventilation system that could be really distributing some of that stuff. Is there something that they should possibly look into for helping to protect themselves?
So should you walk me through the concern that you have? So are you thinking from a neighboring tenant perspective, or are you thinking from a landlord who has like an office building and has many tenants?
Suzanne?
Yes.
Suzanne? We kind of had this discussion prior to, it would specifically in my position be a neighboring tenant. I was actually writing you an email about this now, so if it goes through, disregard. I was curious to know if someone is in a unit above and there's other ways that medical marijuana is often consumed, A, can a landlord dictate how it's consumed? And B, if you're the baby upstairs, what recourse do you have as the parent who does not utilize any kind of marijuana in a neighboring building or a neighboring unit?
So from a landlord's perspective, you can certainly, like I said, you have right now a lot of landlords that have a no tobacco policy. And you can do the exact same thing for marijuana as well and say you're not allowed to smoke, you're not allowed to grow, or do any of these things. It has to be included in your lease in order for you to be able to enforce it, in an effective way. From a tenant perspective, that's a slightly tricky one. I would have to think about that. I don't have an answer right now, but from a tenant perspective, I don't know if you can say that, well, the lease allows for my neighbor to be able to smoke, but it's causing me nuisance, or it's causing me some sort of, difficulty. I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty granular question. But certainly from the landlord's perspective, if you want to make sure that all of your tenants are happy and you foresee that there might be some folks who don't want this situation to arise, you will have to include it in your lease that says it's not allowed in here.
Definitely. And just for future reference, this has come up to me numerous times. This would often be a scenario where these parties are unrelated. So, this would be a building where the person doesn't own the whole building.
Right.
this is someone else's lease, because there's an impairment component to marijuana. Obviously, this is a little different than what we've looked past over the years on secondhand smoke of cigarettes. So that's why I'm thinking children has often come up in this conversation. So, but yeah, if you could ever put some thought into that and let us know, that'd be awesome.
Are you when you say children, can you explain that to me a little bit?
So very specifically, numerous times over the years, I've had instances where people have inquired about medical marijuana, assuming it is allowed or going to be allowed in a unit that's under the unit they own. If the unit above, unrelated to that landlord, is owned by someone else who's getting the secondhand smoke, if they have a baby there, if there's something, you know, they're asking about the seepage of secondhand marijuana smoke, which is obviously just as detrimental, you know, to someone who doesn't want to consume it maybe as cigarette smoke. But because of the impairment factor, I don't know, that's always come up as far as, I don't know that person down there. I have children, now we smoke marijuana upstairs, they smoke all day. Do we have any recourse?
I would imagine that that's the exact same as if it was, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a cigarette or it's marijuana. If it's smoke and it's causing, I mean, unless it's some sort of real nuisance and they weren't allowed to do it on the property, someone who's doing something that's allowed in a private space, I would find that hard to contest. Again, unless it's something that is not allowed or prohibited and they're doing that, which is causing nuisance to you know, somebody, then there's something to contest there. But I think in that case, it's just a buyer beware. I mean, if you know that everyone's allowed to do anything, it's fair game, then I don't know. That's my thought on it. But I mean, I'm happy to take a look at that if something comes up specifically.
Another question along those lines, Shruti, is it possible potentially for, say, like an HOA for their community rules to adopt a kind of a no smoking, no pot, no recreational marijuana regulation for their HOA community?
Yes, I would argue that you can.
And I thank you for that. And we have another couple other questions. Can a person bring it back from California or Nevada as of today and be free from charges if stopped by the police?
So that's a good question, and I don't have the specific. So California and Nevada have specific state laws. I'm not fully aware of what their transportation laws are on cannabis. But again, when we talk about transportation within Arizona, we're seeing that cities have also implemented their own regulations. Like Scottsdale has said no transportation is allowed. And so it really depends on what we're talking about in a very specific manner. So if you're talking about, can you transport it across state lines for free or like without tripping up any sort of regulations, I would be very cautious about doing that, because again, remember, does not matter what the state law allows. If it's federally still regulated and if it's federally illegal, you got to be very careful when you're changing state lines. So if you're thinking about doing that, Kirk, don't do it.
Thanks, Shruti. The next question is regarding, I think we're back to the rental situation here. Could you say it's only that you only allow edibles, but no smoking?
Yes.
That, I know we had some other funny comments in here about from Lane Nesper, having if like say Anheuser-Busch was able to get in on the advertising and selling of recreational marijuana, that they could change their slogan to either "this bud is for you" or "this buzz is for you." So a little bit of humor for all of us today. Are there any other questions out there from the group?
I have one. Trudy, in your bio, you talked about representing some of the hotel owners. And I know that this issue has become a big issue in Colorado and in California, where it says you can't smoke in public, but they then go up to their hotel rooms and smoke. It becomes costly for the owners, but it also becomes very costly for some of the people that are staying there. Is there anything in this law that allows them to be penalized for that?
So is the question, if I understand correctly, can the hotel penalize the guest for smoking?
Yes.
Yes. So the answer to that is yes, they can. Just like you have hotels with the ability to penalize someone if they smoke in a no smoking room, they can do the same thing right now. It is a private establishment. They have the right to tell you that you cannot bring in, more than 10 people into this room. You cannot smoke here. So yes. Actually, what's more interesting these days about the hotel space is this whole COVID-19 testing. Can you test people coming in? Who's supposed to maintain those details? Can I test my employees every day? And so, I'm sure I'm happy to do a presentation separately on that if that's required at some point. But in the hotel space, in the hospitality space, that issue comes up a lot. Can we test the temperature as they're walking in, and what are the regulations on that? Patrick, it looks like you have a comment. Go ahead.
Please, if I may, Ford, I know a lot of the folks on the call, and as you all know, I strictly do tenant representation of national and regional companies. And I just want to add to a caution of the HOAs. A large number of national and regional companies do not, under any circumstances, want to be located in either a shopping center or an office building where there's any sort of marijuana sales. It's bad for their look and bad for their reputation. So if you're repping those companies, I think you ought to ask them their feelings about it. And even if you're representing mom and pops, like I also do, and there's a medical marijuana facility in the building, whether it be medical or recreational, I think you ought to, as a matter of disclosure, I think you need to ask your tenant, do you have a problem with that? Because you'll find, surprisingly, some people do, either on religious grounds, politically, for whatever reason. But some of these places, when you go past them in a shopping center, it'll say Golden Harvest Bakery. Well, it's not a bakery. It's a medical marijuana sales facility. And you will also find in most grocery store leases, notably Bash's and Albertsons and Safeway, they have a laundry list of no uses permitted in the shopping center. No gaming places, no drug sales, no strip bars, no gun shops. Almost for sure, those grocery store leases will preclude any sort of drug sales. And you will have other tenants like I've repped, like H&R Block. It'll be in our lease that you as the landlord cannot put a medical or recreational drug sales facility in it, or you voided my lease. And you're going to find H&R Block is going to take you in front of a Superior Court judge on a temporary restraining order and make your life as a landlord really difficult. So I see this as a disclosure issue when you're repping tenants. And as we all know, you have to ask the right questions to get the right answers. But going forward, I'd ask those questions or you could end up getting sued for misrepresentation. That's it. That's my positive comment for the day, Shruti.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more question for you, Shruti, and this is in regard to the rental agreement. If you already have it in your rental agreement that you prohibit smoking, does this also cover marijuana, or do you have to specifically state that?
My suggestion would be to amend the lease to specifically say no marijuana use, because if it depends on how you're consuming the marijuana. Are you smoking it? Are you eating it? Are you vaping it? There are different ways. You have bombs these days. And so if you want to prohibit all marijuana use, please amend your lease and update it.
So should they include the different types of ways that it can be consumed, since nowadays we have the vaping and the other consumptions?
Sure. If that's something that you are very, strongly opposed to, then yes. But just keep in mind, if someone has a medical, situation that comes up and they want to use it, then you might have to revisit the issue with them, or you might risk losing that tenant in that case. We haven't seen in Arizona, not that I'm aware of, any cases so far where someone with a medical marijuana card has sued their landlord saying that, I need this, I should be allowed to do it under the ADA, under the ADA or anything else. I'm forgetting now what the full form for ADA is. Americans with Disabilities Act, excuse me.
Yes.
We haven't, I don't think, not to my knowledge, have we seen anything so far, but it's certainly a potential issue that could come up.
Excellent. It looks like we have a question from Rebecca. Rebecca, do you want to chime in? I can't tell if that's a raise your hand or if you're just applauding, Rebecca. But it looked like she raised her hand. All right, any other questions from anybody? Did we cover
my email is of course up here in case anyone wants to reach out to me with further questions, anything that I could help guide you on, whether from an application perspective, or if you are a landlord currently thinking about, entering into a lease with someone who's applying for a license. I'm happy to answer any questions. These are very nuanced areas, very gray, still developing. And as a firm, since we do have lobbying as well as part, we're able to really help lobby for what is best for our clients, at the same time making sure that it is legally permissible and all of that fun stuff. So I'm happy to help guide or provide any resource that anyone might need.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Shruti. This has been excellent information. We've enjoyed having you. We've had some really great questions and conversation here. Really appreciate it. I think a lot of our members will love to hear about it. One last little thing. If anybody is interested, is it okay if I have your permission to share your slides with them?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent.
Before you do that though, can I send you a PDF version of it if you don't mind, please?
Sure. Yes.
Thanks.
That'll be perfect. So if any of you would like to have a copy of her slides, just email me, Suzanne@scottsdalerealtors.org, and I will be sure to get those out to you. Once again, thank you, Shruti. We loved having you. Great information. I'm pretty sure everybody else is clapping as well.
I hear that this is the new, I believe this is the new Zoom clap. So
yeah, the jazz hands.
Yeah.
So,
but thank you so
perfect.
much. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I was very nice to be able to answer all the questions. Very good questions. Thank you for the time.
Great presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. I really was just trying to clap, not ask a question.
Oh, sorry about that. I was trying to read the hand symbol.
Yeah, that's all right. Did you mention the happy hour on tomorrow afternoon?
Not yet, but if you want to go ahead and do that, my next thing is to cover our announcements before we close out.
All right. Yeah, I'll let you make that announcement because I'm going to be driving again soon.
Sounds good. Let me go ahead and I will get back to my sharing my screen here. So moving on for our announcements. We have some upcoming dates, our future dates for our commercial forum. Be sure to chime in. You don't have to just be a commercial member. You can be just a member of SAR. This is open up to everyone to attend, even our non-commercial members and affiliates. Please join us January 27th, February 24th, or March 24th. It's the fourth Wednesday of every month is when we like to have those commercial forums. If you have any property touts that you would like to have included in the upcoming commercial forums, please be sure to send an email to commercial@scottsdalerealtors.org and include your PDF or JPEG copy of your marketing flyer that we can include on the slide. We want to remind everyone, we do have a SAR commercial subscriber program that you can apply for. It's $149 for the year, which grants you, you do not have to be a member of SAR. If you're already a member of SAR, you already get access to this and more. But if you are not a member of SAR and want to just subscribe for the package, you can, one of the biggest benefits is to get a discount rate through Catalyst. So you can get a Catalyst subscription discount. Catalyst is a commercial research platform that has extensive research reports and information that you can share with your clients that you can get at a reasonable rate. And before we close out, I want to say thank you to our marketing partners, Martin Lennox with Inspect It First, and Property Inspection, and Helena Donahoe with American Title Service Agency. And don't forget, we do have tomorrow afternoon, you can still register and sign up for it, is our virtual happy hour, our SAR virtual happy hour. We are going to have Scott Drucker with the Arizona Association of Realtors, who's going to be speaking about the new changes and implementation of Article 10 of the Code of Ethics that the National Association of Realtors recently approved. What does that mean? This is your opportunity to ask those questions, find out further details of how this is implemented and what you can look forward to in regards to those changes.